Hello, and welcome to today's Lunchtime Research Talk. Every Wednesday in February, you can tune in to a different talk over lunch with CCA Derry, Londonderry, and Ulster University. Over the month, different PhD researchers from the university will be presenting their research via Zoom in a bite-sized talk, followed by the opportunity for you to ask a question. The aim of these short lunchtime talks is to share with the wider world just some of the research that's taking place at Ulster University. Each talk takes place from 1:15 and lasts no more than 30 minutes, including a Q&A. And the link goes live every Wednesday from 1 p.m. available from our Insta or our news page. So, some thank yous. Thank you to Ulster University, especially Dr. Catherine O'Hara, Dr. Brian Bridges, and Professor Justin McGee, and to our funders, Arts Council of Northern Ireland, Derry City and Strabane District Council, and Garfield Weston Foundation. Now, some housekeeping. Please mute, put your questions in the chat. We are recording, not the Q&A, and enjoy. So, our programme began last week with Jane Harkness talking about wool, and you can see that on our archive on our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search for CCA Derry Londonderry. And future talks will include Vasiliki Stasanaki next Wednesday, the 18th of February, and Dara Shea on the 25th of February. So today I'm delighted to hand over to Katie McFadden. Her topic is Imagined Islands, Envisioning Beyond the Anthropocene Through Moving Image Practice. Hy-Brasil offers a space where the economic and social barriers of our reality can be suspended. Through sensorial moving image practice, this imagined reality allows us to begin envisioning life beyond the Anthropocene, opening space to explore alternative ways of relating to place and environment. Katie is a filmmaker, artist, and researcher from Donegal, living in Belfast. Katie's work seeks to capture the dialogue between past and present, exploring the lasting implications that economic and colonial powers have on our understanding of place and identity. So, over to you, Katie.
Great, thanks so much, Catherine. And thanks for everyone for attending today. So, hello and welcome. I'd like to start off by saying thank you to the CCA for hosting the series of talks and for inviting me to share my research. Doing a PhD can be a very insular process, so it's lovely to get to share what I've been working on, and hopefully it will be of interest to you all as well. So a little bit more background just about myself as well. So my name is Katie McFadden, and I'm an artist, filmmaker, and research, originally from Donegal, but now I'm based in Belfast. So my work primarily takes the form of creative or hybrid documentaries intended for cinematic spaces. So you can see an example of this on the left. This is my short film, The Barrel. So I made that as part of my master's at Queen's University Belfast in film studies. I'm currently developing a feature film with support from Northern Ireland Screen, as well as another short film which is in development with the Scottish Documentary Institute titled Amongst Men. That documentary focuses on the legacy of Charles Byrne, the Irish giant, and his living descendants today. More recently as well, I've been given a studio at Creative Exchange Studios in East Belfast, and this has kind of opened up other elements of my practice that hadn't been so active. So there's an example of a painting I've been working on there on the right. So it's been really nice for me to kind of have that space and to think in some other mediums as well. And then here you see this is actually a screen grab from the feature film I'm developing. This is shot in 16mm, and it's following a group of visually impaired skiers in the Austrian Alps. For me, all of my work is connected. The more experimental stuff, the kind of documentaries, the painting, it's all kind of looking at the same ideas. So it's really easy for me to have a lot of projects running at the same time, as they're all fundamentally the same thing and all exist in the same parts of my mind. So, through my work, I examined the intricate layers of history, memory, and meaning embedded within our landscapes, ultimately in the hope to reclaim our past and imagine a more certain future. So, to look a little bit closer at this project, how can moving image practice make visible the sensory, cultural, and emotional dimensions of oceanic change that resist scientific representation? So the issue is not a lack of scientific knowledge about environmental change, but a difficulty communicating its sensory, cultural, and emotional impacts, and also its effects on the environment and the people who inhabit these environments. So for this project in particular, I'm looking at Irish islands. So Irish islands provide a situated context for this research. Donna Haraway argues that objective knowledge is limited. Therefore, it cannot communicate issues like environmental crisis, which are deeply intertwined with human culture, politics, and identity. In this way, Irish islands provide a meaningful context for this research where we can observe the ways in which environmental crisis is intertwined and its impacts on the inhabitants and also on the environment. In particular, I'm looking at Hy-Brasil. So Hy-Brasil is a mythical island said to lie off the west coast of Ireland. It's an imagined island outside the realities of the Anthropocene, offering a space to examine the invisible and imagined world beyond capitalist constraints. Merleau-Ponty describes the visible and the invisible, the idea that the world is made up not only of what we can see, but also of what we can sense and feel without being able to point to it directly. The invisible isn't the opposite of the visible, it exists alongside the visible. In that way, Hy-Brasil exists alongside the real islands which are scattered around the Irish coast. Hy-Brasil comes to represent the parts of environmental experience that resist being captured in data or in images. And because it can't be measured, owned, or turned into a resource, it sits outside of capitalist logic. As Mark Fisher famously said, quote, "It is easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism." I propose Hy-Brasil as a space where we can temporarily release our imagination from the constraints of capitalism. So, in terms of how I intend to tackle these issues, this is a creative practice as research project. A lot of people still aren't familiar with creative practice as research, and I know I wasn't for a long time, but it's a really great option for a lot of people, especially people like myself who are more visual thinkers. So essentially, the act of creating art is the primary research method. In my case, I'll be exploring different methods of developing a sensory film language to address my research question. The output of this will be a mid-length hybrid documentary that explores the invisible dimensions of environmental change and allows the environment to emerge as a protagonist. So I thought this was a really good opportunity to talk a little bit about a big part of my practice that isn't as visible. What people tend to see as output is, documentaries, short films, sometimes painting or installations. But I feel that that's really about 10% of my practice, and the other 90% is the reading and the thinking and everything that exists in my notebooks. I was fortunate enough to do my bachelor's at IDT, and there was a really big emphasis on notebooking, and it's really stood by me as a method, especially when I don't have a studio space. I feel like my practice can all be contained within a notebook, and this is really the place where my ideas develop. And especially for a project like this, where I'm deep into the theoretical development of a project. The project first begins to exist as a visual output on the page with collage and drawings, but also quotes, memories, and stories. Essentially, everything I look at, any reading I do, any documentaries, like personal memories, anything I'm from when I'm a kid, everything just gets put down into the notebook. And then all of these things begin to converge in this place. At a certain point, I get a really strong idea of how I want a film to feel. And then I can take my camera and begin experimenting with translating that to the screen. As this is a creative practice as research project and my output will be a documentary, I wanted to talk a little bit about the documentaries that have influenced me and continue to influence this project. On the right, we have Leviathan by directors Lucy-Anne Gastang-Taylor and Verena Paravel. So this is a really sensory film. It's set on a shipping vessel, and the camera is attached to machinery and to the fishermen themselves, and it's almost a world of chaos that you're really physically in. It also invokes Hobbes' Leviathan, but the film offers an anti-sovereign counterpoint. Instead of a unified political body, it presents a turbulent world where human perspective dissolves into the forces of sea and machinery. This is a great example of sensory cinema, and I'm also interested in creating a counterpoint to Hobbes' Leviathan. Whereas this film sort of presents it as a place of chaos for humans and animals, I'm sort of interested in the ways in which we're in sync with our natural environment and the animals that we share our environment with. So be another counterpoint again. And then perhaps one of the biggest influences on my practice in general and ever is Robinson and Runes by director Patrick Keeler. This has been, God, I'd say a big influence for about 10 years. And the first time I got to see it, it was actually on the IFI, but it was as part of the screenings for older people and retired people. So I actually just called off their box office, explained I was an art student and that I needed to see this film, and they let me in. And I'm really glad I did, because it's one that's really, really stood by me. So in this film, the English landscape is treated as a site where political, economic, and ecological forces intersect. Its slow, attentive looking foregrounds what Merleau-Ponty calls the visible and the invisible, the surface of things and the hidden structures, capital, history, infrastructure that shape how the landscape appears. This mirrors what I hope to achieve with my exploration of Irish Islands. I think it's a great example of what you see on screen are these very static imagery of English landscapes and sites, but what's actually happening below the surface in the film is much more complex than that and a lot more revealing, and I'd really love to create something similar. So what's next? So at the moment, I'm developing my theoretical framework, and that, of course, will continue. In this case, it involves reading, but also a lot of watching moving image works and documentary. And as with any sort of research heavy project, you kind of get to this point where you feel like the film exists and your ideas are all there and you have this amazing research done and you feel very excited about it. And then the reality is, okay, now I have to make this thing that's turned into something so great in my head. And it's kind of an intimidating part of it, but it's also really exciting, especially in a project like this, where I'm going to start situating myself on different Irish islands and begin developing that film language by testing different methods like underwater cinematography. I intend to use a lot of analog methods like 8mm and hand processing, and then also sound recording. During this time as well, I'm also going to be doing a lot of creative writing, which is a big part of my process as well, where I'll develop a structure for the film. I'll be looking at elements like autofiction, will there be a narrator, real or imagined, and kind of really just bringing together the forms of the film over the next 2 years. So yeah, I just want to say a big thank you for everyone for joining today. I've put some of my contact details on the final slide here, my Instagram handle, my email, and my website. And if anyone wants to see any of my short films or curious, just reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to send over a screener link. And then if anyone is maybe considering a creative practice as research, but they don't know where to begin, I'm super happy to kind of talk through the process. I remember being there, not even really feeling if it was an option for someone like me. But yeah, as a final big thank you to CCA for today and for hosting these talks.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for joining us. I'm going to stop recording and open the Q&A.